In accordance with the resolution of the House, business is interrupted for the presentation of an inaugural speech by the member for Smithfield. I have much pleasure in calling the member for Smithfield.
Madam Speaker, may I commence by congratulating you on your appointment as the Speaker of this House. It's a marvellous achievement, and I wish you every success.
Thank you.
I'm profoundly grateful and touched by the great honour accorded to me by the voters of my electorate of Smithfield. And I'm deeply conscious of the historic victory in being elected the first Liberal member for Smithfield as I rise to deliver my inaugural speech. It's my first speech in Australia's first Parliament. A speech I never imagined I would one day have the honour and privilege to deliver. A speech that I hope will be as extraordinary as my journey into this place. A journey that started in summer of 1918. At the time, my father was just a teenager and my mother a young child. They and their families were among 90,000 Assyrian Christian refugees fleeing their ancestral homeland to escape persecution. My parents and the other refugees were fleeing from the Ottoman Empire to escape what would be later known as the Armenian, Assyrian, and Pontic Greek genocide. By the grace of God, my parents survived for a reason that they were protected and protected by none other than an Australian soldier. Lieutenant General Sir Stanley George Savage, KBE, CB, DSO, MC, ED. At that time, a 27-year-old captain was selected to join the Dunster Force, an elite task force assigned to resupplying the Assyrians fighting in Persia. Unable to complete the task due to the fall of Urmia, he persuaded his British commander that he should stay back with the remaining refugees. For 6 weeks, Captain Savage used all the means at his disposal to protect the refugees against the perpetual onslaught of the Ottoman forces, reasoning that the Turkish commander would concentrate on killing him before harming the refugees. He strategically placed his command at the rear of the refugees' procession and deliberately drew enemy fire. By offering his command at as a target, even though he was outnumbered 100 to 1, Captain Savage managed to slow the enemy advance long enough for most of the refugees to flee. This act of courage and self-sacrifice was far beyond what was expected of a junior officer in the field, and Captain Savage was subsequently decorated with the Distinguished Service Order for his efforts on this occasion. Australian journalist, historian, and official war correspondent Charles Bean wrote that the stand made by Savage and his 8 companions that evening and during half of the next day against hundreds of the enemy thirsting like wolves to get at the defenseless throng was as fine as any episode known to the present writer in the history of this war. My parents survived the genocide because of the heroic actions of Sir Stanley George Savage, and I pay tribute to him today in this House as the newly elected Liberal member for Smithfield. My parents, having survived and eventually meeting some years later, married and had 6 children. I was born in 1948 in Habaniya, a small town on the banks of the Euphrates River in central Iraq, and the location of a British airbase, RAF Habaniya, where my father was employed. At the age of 11, my family moved to Baghdad and settled in the southwestern suburbs of Dora, where I completed my schooling. My parents valued a good education, and they valued hard work. They provided me, my brother, and 4 sisters with all the necessities and encouragements to maintain a higher education. I clearly remember the struggle my parents went through to raise us. They instilled in me a sound work ethic and taught me to take nothing for granted. Thanks to them, I went on to graduate from the University of Baghdad in 1970 with a bachelor's degree in science and geology and a master's degree in petroleum geology in 1975. After completing my master's degree, I began working as a geologist with the National Minerals Corporation, where I supervised mineral exploration programs. My parents, Bejan and Pana Rohan, have recently passed on, but I know they would have been proud of their son becoming the state member of Smithfield. and I know they are watching from a better place. Our family is very close. Here, I would like to thank my brother, Rohan, my sister Albania Darmu, Rebecca Johanna, Sarah Rohan, Ramzia Rohan, and my brothers-in-law, Leon Darmu and Andrew Rohan, and my sister-in-law, Kanna Rohan. They have been of great support to me throughout this campaign. 5 years after completing my postgraduate degree, I was awarded a scholarship to undertake doctorate in the United States. I declined the offer and made the decision to instead leave Iraq forever. I left everything behind, including my teenage sweetheart and future wife, Janet. I arrived in Sydney in September 1979 and settled in the southwestern suburb of Bosley Park in the state electorate of Smithfield. It's where I still live today. Shortly after my arrival, I enrolled at the University of New South Wales to continue my studies under the supervision of Professor Philip Evans. However, in 1981, I was offered a position with Robertson Research Australia as a geologist in North Sydney. It was an offer I couldn't resist. At Robertson Research, I obtained over 8 more years of experience as geologist overseeing oil and coal exploration programs in Australia and abroad. I had the privilege of working with some of the most prominent members of the industry, as well as consummate professionals. The late John Harrison, our chief geologist, whom contributed immensely to my professional development, is one such example. Fate played a role in uniting me again with my teenage sweetheart, Janet. She came to Sydney accompanied by her father, Andrew Simon, in December 1982, after her family had settled in the United Kingdom a year earlier. We were married at St. Mary's Church in Fairfield in January 1983, and we were blessed with 2 boys, Sargon Rohan and Luca Rohan. Both were educated in local public schools, and both have now graduated from university and are busy climbing the corporate ladder in their chosen fields. My sons are my pride and joy. I love them dearly, and I'm honored to have them here today with my wife, Janet. I can't thank enough my wife, Janet, for looking after the 3 boys. I know it was not easy to manage. It needed special talent from you, and for that I say thank you. In 1988, despite the drastically cutting staff, my employer did not survive the recession that Australia had to have. It was tough enough in being unemployed, but to make matters more difficult, my unemployment coincided with the birth of my 2 sons. Simply put, I lost my income at the worst possible time when I needed to support my growing family. However, I was determined to work hard and to provide for my family. I started a small printing business, and having owned and operated this small business for the last 17 years, I know the pressure facing other small business owners. My first-hand experience as a small business owner has taught me the need for greater local employment and investment opportunities, especially for our youth. As an active member of the local community, I help migrant families resettle and establish themselves in Australia. For over 26 years, I worked hard to promote the importance of educational, cultural awareness, and sporting activities in my local community. It was through this voluntary community service that I was introduced to and inspired by a number of individuals. Many of them are here today, but I wish to single out one person in particular. His Beatitude Mar Meled Zaya OAM, Archbishop of the Assyrian Church of the East in Australia and New Zealand. His Beatitude Mar Meled Zaya has dedicated his life to the church and is responsible for the transformation of Australia's Assyrian community by building new churches, cathedrals, schools, as well as social centers and retirement village. His Beatitude sends his apologies, as he unfortunately could not be with us, but I'm sure he is with us in spirit. I also acknowledge that Mr. Yuautwi Kenna, a founding member of the Assyrian Australian Association and a pioneer of Australia's Assyrian community, is also here in the public gallery. After the recession that Australia had to have, I decided to join the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party's conservative values and sound economic policies now truly resonated with me, following the experience of losing my job due to the Labour's economic incompetence and reckless spending. When I joined the Liberal Party, I had no interest in nominating for any public office, including local government, let alone any idea that one day I would be a state member of parliament. My interest at that time was simply to fly the Liberal flag in a Labour Party stronghold, to support local Liberal Party candidates with their election campaigns, and to help local community engage the Liberal Party. Since then, I have held almost every position at the local branch and conference levels. I have had the pleasure of meeting many good people and faithful party members. I am indebted to the Liberal Party for providing me with the opportunity to represent their ideals in this historic parliament. At this point, I want to acknowledge Mr. Bob Robertson, who introduced me to the Liberal Party some 20 years ago. I want to acknowledge all the members of the Smithfield SEC for their support throughout the election campaign, especially Robert Joseph, Nabil Murad, Anwar Osman, Sami Ishak, and Caroline Ishak, as well as members of other local Liberal Party branches, such as Sharbel Saliba Daili, Marcus Lambert, Thomas Dang, Gwen Riley, Annette Wilton, and Robert Jacobucci. I'm very fortunate to know each one of them. I want to acknowledge my family, my Fairfield Council colleagues, Councillor Zayatoma, as well as Councillor Joe Meluso and Councillor Frank Oliveri, who have been with me in the Liberal Party for over 20 years, and I thank them for their support during my campaign. As a councillor on Fairfield City Council over the last 2 years, I have done my best to be a voice of the residents of Fairfield City. I'm most proud of fighting for a youth centre in Fairfield, as well as fighting to keep Fairfield City Farm open, demanding more car spaces in the town centres, and making the council more accountable to the residents. I want to acknowledge our council's general manager, Alan Young, who is here in the public gallery. He has a tough job pleasing all the councillors from the various sides of politics on Fairfield Council, but he does a good job. I wish to express my great appreciation.
The question is that the member's time be extended. All of that opinion say aye. To the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.